The rain was hammering against the windows of our Victorian terrace house in Manchester that Sunday evening. I could smell Mum's roast lamb wafting through from the kitchen, mixed with the familiar scent of Dad's pipe tobacco. Everything about that October evening felt ordinary, except for the knot twisting in my stomach. I'd been putting off this moment for 3 years, but tonight I couldn't hide it anymore. "Oliver, love, could you help set the table?" Mum called from the kitchen. I pushed myself up from the worn leather sofa, my laptop bag weighing heavy on my shoulder. Inside, it was the magazine that would change everything, though I didn't know if it would be for better or worse. My sister Charlotte was already there, arranging the good china we only used for Sunday dinners. She worked at Barclays in the city centre, proper job, proper salary, proper everything. Exactly what our parents had always wanted for both of us. "Still carrying that laptop everywhere?" She smirked. "What are you, 12, playing your little games?" I bit my tongue and placed the forks carefully beside each plate. 3 years. 3 years of comments like that. 3 years of Sunday dinners where I'd become the family joke. The 28-year-old son who still lived at home, who spent all his time on the computer doing God knows what, whilst his younger sister had already bought her own flat. Dad walked in, loosening his tie. He'd been at the golf club all afternoon with his mates from the engineering firm where he'd worked for 30 years. "All right, Ollie." He nodded. Then his eyes caught my laptop bag. "You know the rules, son. No phones or computers at dinner." "I know, Dad." The dining room felt smaller than usual as we all sat down. The autumn wind rattled the old window frames, and I could hear next door's telly through the thin walls. Mum brought in the roast, beaming with pride at her perfectly crispy potatoes. This was her domain, these Sunday dinners. The one time each week we all came together, no matter what. "So," Dad started, carving the lamb with practiced precision, "Charlotte tells us she's been promoted. Senior analyst now." "That's brilliant, sweetheart," Mum gushed, reaching over to squeeze Charlotte's hand. 25 and already senior analyst. When I was your age, I was still filing papers at the council." Charlotte preened under the attention. "Well, it's just about dedication, really. Putting in the hours, showing up every day, having a real career path." Her eyes flicked to me on that last bit. The message was clear. "Speaking of which," Dad said, serving up the meat, "I ran into Terry at the club today. His lads just started at that new tech firm in Spinningfields. Proper job, good benefits. I mentioned you were good with computers, Ollie. He said they might have some entry-level positions." My hand tightened around my fork. "Thanks, Dad, but I'm actually—" "Oh, here we go," Charlotte interrupted, rolling her eyes. "Let me guess, you're building something big on the internet? You're almost there with your content?" "Charlotte," Mum said gently, though I could see she was trying not to smile. "What?" "I'm just saying what we're all thinking. He sits in his room all day talking to a camera. The neighbours probably think he's gone mad. Mrs. Henderson asked me the other day if Oliver was all right, said she heard him talking to himself at all hours." My face burned. Through the dining room window, I could see the amber streetlights beginning to flicker on, casting long shadows across our small front garden. The same view I'd been looking at for 28 years, the same conversations, the same disappointment barely hidden behind forced politeness. "It's not just talking to a camera," I said quietly. Dad sighed, setting down his knife and fork. "Son, we've been patient. Your mum and we've let you live here rent-free for 3 years since you left that marketing job. But you're nearly 30. Don't you think it's time to face reality? This YouTube thing, it's not a career. It's a hobby at best. A very expensive hobby," Charlotte added. "All that equipment in your room, the lights, the cameras, could have put a deposit on a flat with that money." Mum reached over and patted my hand. "We just worry about you, love. What happens when you're 40 and still doing this? No pension, no stability. What kind of future is that?" I looked around the table at their faces. Dad's weathered hands from years of proper work, Mum's concerned eyes behind her reading glasses, Charlotte's smug certainty that she'd chosen the right path. The gravy was getting cold, forming a skin on top. The Yorkshire puddings were deflating. Everything was falling flat, just like their opinion of me. You know what really gets me? Charlotte continued, apparently not satisfied with the damage already done. You had everything going for you. Good degree from Manchester Uni, that job at the marketing firm. You were normal. Now you're just... What do you even call yourself? An influencer? She said the word like it tasted bitter. Content creator, I corrected quietly. Right, content creator. Brilliant. I'll tell my colleagues that. What does your brother do? Oh, he's a content creator. I'm sure they'll be dead impressed. The clock on the mantel chimed 7. The same clock that had been there since I was a child, marking time in this house where nothing ever changed except the growing disappointment in my parents' eyes. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of traffic on the main road. People going places, doing things, living lives that made sense to everyone around them. I saw that article in The Guardian last week, Dad said, trying to sound casual but failing. About young people wasting their potential on social media, mental health crisis they called it. Living in fantasy worlds instead of the real one. Did you read the whole article, Dad? I asked. Didn't need to. The headline said enough. That was the moment. The rain had turned to drizzle, pattering softly against the windows. I reached for my laptop bag, my hands surprisingly steady. What are you doing? Mum asked. Oliver, you know the rules about dinner. I know, Mum. But there's something I need to show you all. Oh, Christ, Charlotte muttered. Here comes another one of your videos. What is it this time? 10 ways to procrastinate professionally? How to disappoint your parents in 5 easy steps? I pulled out the magazine. The weight of it felt significant in my hands. The glossy cover caught the light from the overhead lamp, the one with the shade Mum had picked out at John Lewis 15 years ago. Everything in this house had a history, a proper story. Now it was time for mine. Is that... Mum's voice trailed off as she saw the cover. Forbes. My face staring back at them from the cover of bloody Forbes magazine. The headline read, The UK's Hidden Digital Empire, How Oliver Whitman Built a 10 million business from his childhood bedroom. The silence was deafening. Even the rain seemed to pause. Charlotte's fork clattered onto her plate, sending gravy splattering across the white tablecloth Mum had inherited from Nan. This is a joke, right? Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper. You've had this mocked up. There's websites that do that now? I opened the magazine to the feature article. 6 pages, photos of me in my room, the same room they'd mocked, screenshots of my analytics, bank statements I'd authorized them to publish. The whole truth laid out in black and white. It's real, I said simply. Dad's hands were shaking as he took the magazine. His eyes scanned the pages, growing wider with each paragraph. I watched his expression change from skepticism to confusion to something I'd never seen before. Awe. £10 million, he said, the words seeming to stick in his throat. Actually, closer to 12 now. The article's a month old. Things have grown since then. Mum had tears in her eyes. But how? You never said... We never knew. You never asked, I said, and immediately regretted how harsh it sounded. I mean, every time I tried to explain, you'd already decided it wasn't real work, so I stopped trying. Charlotte grabbed the magazine from Dad, her face flushing red as she read. This says you employ 15 people, full-time, with benefits. 17 now. Just hired 2 more editors last week. We've got an office in Media City, though I still prefer working from home most days. Media City? Dad's voice cracked. That's where the BBC is. Same building, actually, 3rd floor. The Yorkshire puddings were completely flat now, forgotten on everyone's plates. Charlotte kept flipping through the pages, her expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that looked like fear. This says you've worked with Nike, Amazon, the BBC, she read out loud. Among others, yeah. Just signed a deal with Netflix last month. Documentary series about digital entrepreneurship. They want to follow me for a year. Netflix, Mum gasped. I nodded. The rain had picked up again, drumming against the windows with renewed intensity. But inside our little dining room, it felt like time had stopped. The smell of cold lamb fat was overwhelming. The gravy had fully congealed, but nobody moved to clear anything away. "Why didn't you tell us?" Dad asked finally. His voice was different now, smaller. "All this time we thought... I told everyone at the club that you were unemployed, living off us. Would you have believed me if I had? Remember 6 months ago when I mentioned I'd made £1,000 from one video? You laughed, said it was probably a scam." He looked down at his hands, those strong, working man's hands that had built things, fixed things, provided for his family the only way he knew how. "I didn't understand," he admitted. Charlotte suddenly stood up, the magazine falling from her hands onto her plate, gravy seeping into the glossy pages. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice shaking. "Charlotte, sit down," Mum said. "No, this isn't fair. I did everything right. Everything. The degree, the job, the bloody flat in Didsbury with a mortgage I can barely afford. I work 60-hour weeks. I've missed holidays, birthdays, everything for that bank, and he just sat in his room, playing on the internet." "It wasn't playing," I said quietly. "I don't care what you call it." She was properly crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Do you know what I make in a year, do you? £42,000. I thought I was doing well. Senior analyst at 25. I was so proud. And you're telling me you make that in what, a week?" "Charlotte," I started, but she wasn't done. "I defended the bank when people said they were soulless. I wore the suits, played the game, networked at horrible wine bars with horrible people. I gave up my art, my photography, everything creative about myself to be sensible, to be what Mum and Dad wanted, what society wanted. And for what?" She grabbed her coat from the back of her chair. "You want to know the really pathetic part? I watch YouTube every night before bed. It's the only thing that helps me unwind after another day of spreadsheets and meetings about meetings. And last month, I watched one of your videos. Didn't even realize it was you at first. Different name, different everything. But I watched it, and I liked it, and I subscribed. Your own sister subscribed to your channel without even knowing it was you, because you never thought to tell us. We weren't important enough to share this with." The front door slammed behind her, loud enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. Family photos, Charlotte's graduation, my graduation, Christmas dinners. All the moments that had led to this one. Mum stood to go after her, but Dad put his hand on her arm. "Let her go. She needs time." We sat there in silence for a moment. The rain had turned to sleet, tapping against the windows like tiny fingers. The street outside was empty except for the occasional car splashing through puddles. Normal Sunday evening in Manchester. Except nothing would be normal again. £10 million, Dad said again, like saying it might make it more real. "From talking to a camera." "It's more than that, Dad. It's storytelling, building communities, creating content that helps people, entertains them, teaches them things. It's a business, a real business." He nodded slowly. "I suppose I'm the fool then. 30 years at the same firm. Same desk, same salary with the same 3% raise each year if we're lucky. Thought I was teaching you about hard work and stability. You did teach me about hard work. I work 18-hour days sometimes. I just do it differently." Mum was looking through the magazine now, more carefully than the others had. "This photo," she said, pointing to one of me in my room. "I can see your certificates on the wall behind you, your degree, that marketing award from your old job. You kept them." "Of course I kept them. They're part of my story. And this bit here," she continued, her finger tracing the words, "where you talk about your biggest inspiration. You said it was Sunday dinners with your family, that even when they didn't understand, they never kicked you out. They gave you the space to become who you needed to be." I hadn't thought they'd read that far. "Well, it's true." Dad cleared his throat. "That Terry's son I mentioned, the one at the tech firm, he actually asked if you were the Oliver Whitman from YouTube. I said no. Said my son was just Oliver who lived at home. Didn't even occur to me you might be someone people would know." "It's all right, Dad." "No, it's not. I've been a right prick, haven't I? All of us have. Sitting here week after week making you feel small, making jokes about your little hobby. Christ, you've built an empire while we were mocking you over roast dinners." The sleet was turning back to rain. Through the window, I could see Charlotte's car was still parked outside. She was sitting in it, just sitting there in the dark. The interior light was on, and I could see her on her phone, probably looking up my channel properly for the first time. I should have told you all sooner, I admitted, but honestly, part of me was scared. What if I told you, and then it all fell apart? What if it was just luck, a fluke? It's only been really successful for about 18 months. Before that, I was making barely enough to cover my equipment costs. But you kept going, Mum said softly. I believed in it, even when no one else did, especially when no one else did. Dad stood up suddenly, walked around the table, and did something he hadn't done since I was 12. He hugged me. Properly hugged me, not one of those awkward pat-on-the-back things. I could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn my entire life. Old Spice, dependable, traditional, everything I wasn't. I'm proud of you, son, he said into my shoulder. I don't understand it. I probably never will, but I'm proud of you. Mum joined the hug, and for a moment we stood there in our dining room, with the cold dinner and the family drama and the rain outside, just being a family, a complicated, imperfect, occasionally cruel family, but ours nonetheless. Should I go talk to Charlotte? I asked when we finally separated. Give her a minute, Mum said. You know how she is. Needs to process things in her own time. We started clearing the table together, something we hadn't done as a family in years. Usually, it was just Mum and me, while Dad and Charlotte discussed her work in the living room. But now Dad was scraping plates, and Charlotte's chair sat empty, and everything was different. Will you show us? Dad asked suddenly. Your videos, I mean. Your office, the whole operation. I want to understand. Really? Really? Might as well learn what my son actually does for a living. Only 3 years late, but better than never, eh? As I was explaining what a CPM rate was to my bewildered parents, the front door opened quietly. Charlotte stood in the doorway of the dining room, her eyes red and puffy, her coat soaked from the rain. I watched 3 of your videos in the car, she said without preamble. They're good, really good. The one about overcoming family expectations. She paused, a bitter smile twisting her lips. That was about us, wasn't it? Not just you, me too, all of us really. She nodded, then looked at our parents. Did you know he donates 20% of his earnings to charity? It's on his website. Mental health charities mostly. Youth programs, did you know that? We all looked at each other, the answer obvious. Of course you didn't, because we never really looked, never really saw him. She walked over to the table, picked up the magazine with the gravy stains, and stared at my face on the cover. I'm jealous, she admitted. Probably will be for a while. But I'm also proud? Is that allowed? To be jealous and proud at the same time. I think that's just being a sibling, I said. She laughed, a wet, shaky sound. I hate that you're successful. I hate that you were right. I hate that I was such a bitch about it. But mostly I hate that I've been miserable for 2 years at a job I despise, and you've been up there in your room, changing the world, and I didn't even notice. You're not happy at the bank? Mum asked, surprised. Charlotte laughed again, more bitter this time. I haven't been happy since the day I started, but it was what you're supposed to do, right? Get the good job, climb the ladder, retire at 65 with a decent pension and a house that's finally paid off. The dream. Charlotte, Dad started. No, it's fine. It's good, actually. Seeing this, she gestured at the magazine, it's made me realize something. I'm 25. That's not too late to change direction, is it? It's never too late, I said. One of my most popular videos is about a 60-year-old who started a channel about gardening. She's got 2 million subscribers now. 2 million, Dad whispered. People watching gardening videos? People watch everything, Dad. That's the beauty of it. Whatever you're passionate about, there's an audience for it. Charlotte picked up her phone. I'm texting my boss, telling him I need to use some of my vacation days. All of them, actually. Got about 4 weeks saved up. Charlotte, don't do anything rash, Mum warned. I'm not quitting, not yet. But I need to think, really think about what I want. She looked at me. Would you help me? If I wanted to try something creative, not YouTube necessarily, but something? Of course. We stood there, the four of us, in our dining room with its outdated wallpaper and creaky floorboards. The rain had finally stopped, and through the window I could see stars beginning to appear between the clouds. It was still early, only 7:30, but it felt like midnight, like we'd lived a whole day in the span of one ruined dinner. Right, Mum said, breaking the spell. Who wants pudding? I've made sticky toffee, and I'll be damned if we're not eating it after all this drama. As she bustled off to the kitchen, Dad picked up the magazine again. Forbes, he mused. My son's in Forbes. Terry's going to shit himself when I tell him at the club tomorrow. Dad! What? I'm allowed to brag about my successful son, aren't I? 30 years I've been listening to those bastards go on about their kids. Doctor this, lawyer that. Well, now it's my turn. Charlotte snorted. You don't even know what he does. He's an entrepreneur. A digital entrepreneur. That's what it says here. My son, the entrepreneur. You're going to be insufferable about this, aren't you? I said. Absolutely. Going to frame this cover. Put it on my desk at work. Might even learn what a YouTube is. It's just YouTube, Dad, not a YouTube. Whatever it is, my son's conquered it. Mum returned with the pudding and fresh plates. As she served, she said quietly, You know, I always wondered why you stayed here. With your success, you could have moved out ages ago, bought a house, a nice car. Why didn't you? I thought about it as I took my first bite of pudding. It was perfect, as always, sweet and warm and comforting. I guess I needed to prove it here first, in this house, with you lot. It wouldn't have meant anything otherwise. Making it out there in the world is one thing, but making you understand, making you see me, that was the real challenge. Well, Charlotte said, raising her water glass, mission bloody accomplished. We clinked glasses, even Dad with his beer, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe in this house. The dining room didn't feel smaller anymore. If anything, it felt bigger, like the walls had expanded to accommodate this new version of us. This family that was learning, slowly and painfully, to see each other clearly. So, Dad said, settling back in his chair, explain to me about this Netflix thing. They're really going to follow you around with cameras. Actually, I'll be doing most of the filming myself. That's kind of the point. Showing how content creators work, the behind-the-scenes reality of it. But you'll be on proper telly. It'll be on Netflix, Dad. That's bigger than telly these days. He shook his head in wonder. The world's gone mad. Absolutely mad. And apparently, my son's leading the charge. Later, after the pudding was finished and the dishes were done, Charlotte and I stood in the kitchen while our parents watched the news in the living room. She was drying while I washed, a rhythm we'd fallen into as kids and never quite lost. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for all of it, the jokes, the comments, the attitude. I was projecting my own unhappiness onto you. I know, that video you made about family expectations. You said something about how the people who love us sometimes hurt us the most because they're trying to protect us from their own fears. That was about Dad, wasn't it? His fear of instability. And Mum's fear of us being left behind, and your fear of being ordinary. She stopped drying, the tea towel hanging limply in her hands. I am ordinary, though. That's the thing. I'm completely, utterly ordinary. And you're not. Charlotte, you graduated with first-class honors. You're a senior analyst at 25. You're hardly ordinary. But I'm not happy, and you are. I can see it now, looking back. Even when we were taking the piss, you had this light about you, this certainty. I haven't felt that since I was 17 and thought I was going to be a photographer. Why didn't you pursue photography? She laughed, but it was sad. Remember when I told Mum and Dad I wanted to go to art school? Dad literally choked on his tea. Said artists end up serving coffee to people with real jobs. And now his son makes millions from being creative, and his daughter with the real job is miserable. Ironic, isn't it? I handed her the last plate. It's not too late, Charlotte. 25 is nothing. You could do anything. Easy for you to say. You've already made it. I failed for 2 years before anything worked. Posted videos nobody watched. Lost money on equipment I couldn't afford. The only difference between us is that I was too stubborn to stop. She folded the tea towel precisely, the way Mum had taught us. Everything in its place. Will you really help me if I decide to try something different? Of course, but you have to promise me something. What? Don't do it for Mum and Dad. Don't do it to compete with me. Don't even do it for money. Do it because you can't imagine doing anything else. That's the only way it works. She nodded, then surprised me by hugging me. Quick and awkward, but real. I still kind of hate you a bit, she mumbled into my shoulder. I know, but I love you too. I know that too. When we joined our parents in the living room, Dad had my YouTube channel up on the TV. He was scrolling through videos with the remote, squinting at the titles. How to build a 6-figure business from your bedroom, he read. Bloody hell, Oliver. People really watch this. Click on it and see, I said. He did. My face filled the TV screen, confident and articulate in a way I never was at family dinners. The view count at the bottom made Mum gasp. 3.4 million. That's million with an M, Dad said unnecessarily. We watched in silence for a few minutes. It was surreal, seeing myself on the family television, in the room where we'd watched countless hours of proper programs. The BBC, ITV, Sky Sports. And now me, talking about conversion rates and audience retention. You're good, Charlotte said, sounding surprised. Like, actually good. You're not just some kid with a camera. You know what you're talking about. Thanks, I think. Turn it up, love, Mum said to Dad. I want to hear what he's saying. And so we spent the rest of the evening watching my videos. My parents asking questions, Charlotte occasionally adding commentary, sometimes sarcastic but increasingly genuine. Outside, Manchester continued its Sunday night routine. But inside our little terrace house, something had fundamentally shifted. It was nearly midnight when I finally went up to my room, the same room I'd been mocked for never leaving. My studio, though they hadn't known to call it that. The lights were off, the cameras silent, but on my desk was a package I'd been saving for the right moment. Another magazine, Time, the cover story about digital entrepreneurs shaping the future. My name was third on the list. I'd planned to show them this one at Christmas, maybe, build up to it gradually. But now, looking at it, I realized it didn't matter anymore. The validation I'd been seeking, the proof I'd been accumulating, I'd already got what I needed. Not their approval exactly, but their understanding, their recognition that my path, however unconventional, was valid. I could hear Charlotte in her room next door, on the phone with someone. A friend, probably, processing the evening's revelations. Dad's snores were already rumbling through the walls. Mum was probably reading in bed, her nightly routine with a cup of chamomile tea, the same sounds I'd been hearing for years. But everything was different now. I opened my laptop and looked at the analytics dashboard I'd hidden from them for so long. The numbers were good, better than good. The Netflix deal alone would set me up for life. But sitting there in my childhood bedroom with its faded football posters and university textbooks, I realized something. The numbers had never been the point. Not really. The point had been proving that there was more than one way to succeed, more than one way to make your parents proud, more than one way to be worthy of a seat at the Sunday dinner table. My phone buzzed, a text from Charlotte. Just watched another one of your videos, the one about imposter syndrome. Did you know I've been dealing with that for 2 years? Feeling like a fraud at the bank. Anyway, I've got an idea. Can we talk tomorrow? I smiled and texted back, of course. My office or yours? You have an office at Media City and you've been letting us think you were unemployed. I have a lot to show you. Apparently. Night, you successful bastard. Night, Charlotte. I was about to close my laptop when an email notification popped up. The sender made my heart skip. The Royal Television Society. Subject line, invitation to speak at annual conference. They wanted me to give the keynote address. Me, The kid who'd been sitting at his parents' dinner table 3 hours ago, being told to get a real job. I thought about waking everyone up to tell them. But no, this one could wait until next Sunday. We'd have plenty of dinners to share news now, plenty of chances to surprise each other. To be a family that actually saw each other, not just the versions we'd decided were acceptable. The rain had started again, gentler now. Manchester rain, constant and familiar. I'd grown up with that sound, built my empire to that soundtrack. And tomorrow, I'd wake up in the same room, in the same house with the same family. But everything had changed. I closed the laptop and got ready for bed. Tomorrow, I had a video to shoot, a story to tell, millions of people waiting to hear what I had to say. But tonight had been the most important audience of all. 4 people around a dinner table, my toughest critics, my harshest judges, my family. And finally, they'd heard me. The Forbes magazine was still downstairs, stained with gravy and wrinkled from Charlotte's tears. Tomorrow, Dad would probably take it to work, show it off like a trophy. Mum would tell the neighbours, the ones who'd wondered what I was doing up here all day. Charlotte would probably start her own journey, whatever that looked like. But tonight, I lay in my childhood bed listening to the rain and the familiar sounds of home and felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Complete. Not because of the money or the fame or the magazines, but because the people who'd raised me, who'd shaped me, who'd inadvertently driven me to prove them wrong, they finally understood. The title of my next video was already forming in my mind. What happens when your family finally sees you? It would probably go viral. The algorithm loved emotional family content. But for once, I didn't care about the views or the engagement rate or the ad revenue. Some stories were worth telling just because they were true.